Thank you. Thanks, Caroline. Okay, we'll make a start. We're just past 2 o'clock and the Cabinet meeting for Thursday, 9th of the November. It's come around quickly, so we've got that. Quite a big one. For those who are looking at this on the telly or whatever, there's some of the minutes. If you think the members, or particularly the officers who put this together, this is some of the work they've been doing. I don't think people realise how much work that goes into some of this. And I'm sure for the keyboard warriors, I don't think that's offensive, is it? To say keyboard warriors will have some good bedtime reading with this. And they'll tick where we've missed and the spelling mistakes and the grammar. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, I'll move apologies of absence, please. Obviously none, I can see them all sat there, so that's okay. And the item on page 5 to 7 is the second item, which is the previous correct record, the minutes of the meeting held on 5th of October 23. Can I have a seconder? Yeah, we're agreed. Are we all agreed? That's okay, thank you. And moving on to 3 quickly is the declaration of interest. Are there any declared? None declared. Thank you. And move on to item 4, which is the forward plan, which is Democratic Services Manager.
Just for noting, Leader.
Pardon?
Just for noting.
I know it's just for noting, but is there any comment? No? We agree? Thank you. And 5 is the Prudential Code Indicator Monitoring 2023-24 and Quarterly Treasury Report of Activity Report for Quarter 2. And Tina's with us now. Bear with it with Tina because she's still jet lagged. But she's got brains working. Don't underestimate her. Tina, thank you.
Hi all. I'd like to present today the Quarter 2 Monitoring Report and Prudential Indicators Codes. And you have to excuse me because I'm full of cold as well. At Quarter 2, this is the mid-year Treasury update, which we are required to bring you every 6 months. So we'll first start off with the economic update, and the report is actually in, I think it's page 33 onwards in your pack. So we look at the economical update. So for Quarter 2, so gross domestic product, I think we said this before, basically it's just a measure of how the economy is growing. And it measures the total value of all goods made and services provided during a specific time. Now, so during the period of July to September 23, we actually had a decrease of 0.5% in GDP, and that followed a 0.2% growth in the previous quarter. The level of GDP is now 0.7% below the pre-coronavirus levels of October to December 2019. When we look at inflation, we have to consider 2 factors. So the Consumer Price Index, which is a measure of the cost of living of a typical person, and then also the core CPI, which is very similar, but it removes the energy and food prices because they can be quite volatile. So you shouldn't look at one without the other, really, as it gives a bit of a misinterpretation. So if looking at Quarter 2, CPI actually fell from 8.7% in April to 6.7% in August. Which is, it's good news. It's finally coming down. However, we did say that you need to be careful how we interpret this, and core CPI needs to be taken into account as well. And this time, it also fell from its all-time high of 7.1% in April to 6.7% in August. So increasing GDP in the first quarter showed an improvement in the economy, but the second quarter actually shows a decrease that's in excess of that the previous quarter's increase, which actually means that the economy is not moving forward quite as fast as we anticipated. So whilst inflation is coming down, perhaps not as fast as we would like it to. So whilst we have avoided the predicted recession that was predicted for current financial year, inflation is still high, but it is decreasing, and core CPI is also decreasing, which indicates an overall improving position for the economy. There's still a lot of tightness in the labour market, but it is continuing to ease. This not yet quite fed through to the easing of wage growth, which we're currently seeing in the UK. And the wage growth rates have actually risen from 8.4% to 8.5%, which means that the UK wage growth is still much faster than it is in the US and also in Europe. So the Monetary Policy Committee meeting on the 20th of September left interest rates unchanged at 5.25%, which is good news, and we expected them to be increasing again to 5.5%, but I think the tightness in the labour market has actually probably persuaded them to keep rates the same. So we're not predicting now that they will go up above that, or our Treasury Management isn't predicting that they will go up above that. So our Treasury Management advisors, Link, they provide a forecast for us in inflation rates and how they expect that they're going to go over the next couple of years. So what they're saying now is they expect the peak to be at 5.25% in December 23, and then they expect it to start falling and reaching 2.75 by December 25, which is a better position than what we previously expected with that peak at 5.5%. The positive side of high interest rates for the council is that we receive a much higher rate of interest on our investments than we additionally predicted. We're currently have reworked the forecast, and we are expecting to receive almost an extra £900,000 this current financial year in interest on our investments, which is really good news to us. And this is likely to continue around to about mid-24, when interest rates will start to fall. So we should see continuous high returns on our investments up until that point. So if we look at Appendix 1 of the Treasury Management Report for Q2, this talks about how our investments and how they're performing. So we've had an additional £613,000 of interest that we've received from our money market funds from April to September. This equates to an overall equated rate of about 4.73%, which is very slightly less than the compounded sterling overnight rate, or SONIA, as she's most commonly known, of 5.12%. So not that much different, actually, so it's a really good return for us. We do have £1 million that's also invested in our property fund, and if you remember last time when I presented this, I did say that that has actually decreased in value slightly. It's nothing to worry about. It is a long-term investment, so it is expected to fluctuate. It hasn't moved significantly from last quarter. It's still around the just over £900,000 mark, so it's about £100,000 lower value than what we initially invested. However, we do receive dividends on that every quarter, and in Q2 we received a dividend of £11,800. So overall this year we've received £22,000 dividends on that investment. So whilst the overall investment has reduced slightly, we do expect it to go back up over the coming years. So, as I say, nothing to worry about. We've had no new borrowing undertaken in Q2, which is good because obviously interest rates remain high. So any borrowing that we do take out now is subject to those higher interest rates. So no new borrowing is good news for us. Appendix 2 sets out the performance against the approved indicators, which are measures of affordability. I'm not going to go through all of those because they're in the report. They're quite self-explanatory. All you really need to know is that we can confirm that for Q2 we've continued to operate within those boundaries that was approved at budget time in March last year. So that's it for the Treasury Management Report. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Tina. Michael, just do.
Yeah, thank you to Tina, and thanks to the ongoing work of Tina and the wider team, particularly in terms of our investments, and a positive position, obviously, in terms of the interest rates, although obviously there is a risk as well in terms of the interest rates for the council in terms of costs and other projects that we have. I mean, just 2 points I wanted to raise. Leader, I thought it was very, very telling, the commentary at the start of the report about the economy in terms of gross domestic product being still below the position that we were pre-COVID. So in effect, everybody knows that COVID was a significant shock. Everybody knows that the war in Ukraine, Putin's invasion of Ukraine has had a significant impact, but we also know that the government hasn't got a grip on the economy, and the economy is not back into a position that it was in pre-COVID. It's 0.7% below where it was pre-COVID. And the other thing is, of course, everybody welcomes a reduction in the consumer price inflation, but consumer price inflation still running at 6.7%, which is in a decade's high, even if now not still at an all-time high. Let's be clear that, you know, you can't paint that any other way than just because inflation is coming down, prices are still continuing to increase in the shops. And that has an impact on us in terms of our services as the council. But actually, much more importantly for me, every single resident and every single business in Gedling is still feeling the hit of that in the weekly shop, in filling the fuel when you go to the forecourt, in terms of filling your car, and in terms of trying to do the work to maintain your family life or your business at home or in the business that you occupy. And that continues to be a massive concern. But I think we are very well supported by Tina and her wider team. We'll talk about the budget proposals in a minute. Leader, there are obviously still significant challenges bearing down on the council in terms of our budget position, but overall I think we're very fortunate to have Tina and a wider team, but the position for the economy looks very, very gloomy, and I just hope at some point the government gets a grip on it, because it's working people paying the price.
Thanks, Michael. Any more comments? Any more comments? I'll move to the recommendation, which is on page 17. That is to note the report. Seconded. Agreed. Thank you. Move on quickly to 6. Still with you, Tina. That's a go to the, where are we? Yeah, budget monitoring and environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Okay, so we move on to the budget monitoring report for Q2. This report is a key decision. There is a number of approvals required for environments, use of reserves and changes to the capital programme. So the approved budget, which was agreed and approved by full council in March 2023, is 14,199,900. There has been some movements in the quarter, and we are actually reporting an overall underspend of 182,500 for 23-24 currently. This is likely to move by Q3. It usually does, but that's our best forecast at the moment. Whilst we are reporting an overall underspend, there has been some major variances and some major overspends within the budget. So we will briefly go through those. So one of the most significant ones is an increase in fuel costs following the switch to hydrogenated vegetable oil. We're requesting an additional £100,000 be put into the budget for this current financial year. We did put £50,000 in as part of the budget process when we did the budget for 23-24. However, this is proving not to have been significant enough. We have done a very recent analysis on the type of fuel. And this analysis has indicated that the cost of HVO is around 31% higher than the cost of diesel. So the overall cost of HVO for this current financial year is £150,000 higher. This obviously, though, was part of the council's response to climate agenda. So whilst it costs us more money, it has positive impacts on the environment, which we're committed to as part of our obligations and our priorities. The other significant increase, overspend here, is around workshop repairs on vehicles, on our fleet. And this is due to more repairs needed to vehicles due to retaining them for longer periods of time. We're having to retain them for a bit longer because lead times for the delivery of new vehicles have increased significantly and are sometimes as much as 18 months to get some of the vehicles from being ordered actually being delivered. The delay in vehicle replacement, it has an impact on long-term borrowing costs, and a review of the current vehicle replacement programme is underway, so we can assess the optimal replacement time in line with increased lead times for new vehicles. There will be an offset into this because if we're not buying new vehicles, then it obviously has an impact on the minimum revenue provision and that we put forward for the assets. So there will be an impact which we tend to see towards the end of the year, so we'll slightly be offset from that. Another further increase of £65,000 in budget, which is another increase in demand for bed and breakfast. We've talked about this previously. The demand is just increasing. There's more people presenting. We have a statutory obligation to deal with homelessness. And currently we just do not have enough housing stock to house people. So we are still having to put people in bed and breakfast accommodation. It is demand-led. The cost of this will be met by the homelessness grant that we currently receive from government. Other significant movements here is deferral of efficiencies, which total 216,600. This is mainly due to service reviews in environment and waste, which have been delayed. And they've been delayed in part due to a new system which is currently being introduced in the waste services area. These deferrals will be expected to be delivered next financial year, and they have been partially offset by use of the risk management reserve of £79,000, which we put aside specifically for any deferrals, inefficiencies that come forward. Also, discretionary schemes for council tax hardship relief relating to care leavers has had an additional cost of £64,000, which has just had a much higher take-up than that of previous years. So we are actually reaching out and supporting more residents, care leavers. Some of this has been offset with savings that we've had on gas contracts at Colton Forum Leisure Centre of £50,000. This is just mainly due to timing differences of the contract date. The new contract started mid-year, so we was able to take advantage of the lower prices from last financial year. However, it is only a timing difference, and we will see the full impact of those increased gas prices next financial year. On an income basis, we've received additional investment income of £686,600. That was forecast at Q2. We've currently done another forecast, which indicates that it might be slightly higher than that. So again, good news, and we've talked about that as part of the Treasury Management Report. So that investment, additional investment income is offsetting a lot of those overspends that we talked about, which is why we're still able to see an overall underspend on the annual budget. We've also had a net reduction in the contribution to overheads of £32,000, which is following the end of the Bestwood Country Park maintenance contract. So obviously that income we will no longer be receiving. So it does mean that there is a net impact of £32,000 cost there. The pay award has now been agreed, and in addition to the £775,000 that we put in at budget time, an additional £175,000 is now needed to meet the pay award of 1925 on all NGC pay points. And you'll see that in Appendix 1 for approval. Also support to residents, so the council tax reduction scheme of 172,600 has had quite a high take-up. It's mainly government funded, but as at Q2, we have overspent on that by about £6,500 of grant awarded over the funding amount, which will fall as a cost to the council, but obviously again is supporting residents. The efficiency programme, we have briefly touched on that. So the efficiency programme proposal of 894,000 for 23-24 includes budget and deferrals from 22-23. We have briefly said that there is additional deferrals of £216,600 this year, mainly due to those service reviews in environment and waste which haven't taken place, and these will be deferred to next financial year and are expected to be delivered next financial year once the waste system has been introduced and some of these efficiencies can start to be realised. Future years MTFP includes £2.8 million of ongoing efficiencies that need to be identified and delivered. We are still currently undertaking a base budget review which to identify those potential savings, which will run alongside the budget process for 24-25. Proposed efficiencies are due to be discussed with the leader and the deputy over the next few weeks and will be discussed with portfolio holders in the coming month, ready for presentation to Cabinet as part of the Council's budget report. So capital programme, so we have an approved capital budget of 6.9 million, which was agreed in March, plus carry forwards of 7.2 million from deferred schemes from 22-23. There was also amendments presented at Q1 of 1.3 million, which makes an overall reduction to the capital programme and a revised capital programme of £12.84 million. I think we said previously that it does seem quite high because that does include the contribution to the GAR, which was £4.5 million, which has now been paid out. There is a number of proposed amendments to the capital programme at Q2, which total a reduction to the programme of 335,000. These are set out on pages 37 and 38 of the report. They're mainly due to deferrals, schemes that will be deferred to next financial year. There are a few small additions and a few small reductions to existing schemes, but it is mainly deferrals. You can see in the financing of the capital programme that it is still predominantly financed through borrowing and grants. The funding chart on page 39 is slightly misrepresented as it shows that the funding of the GAR is from SIL. If you take that out, it does show that the capital programme is still mainly funded by, by borrowing and by grants. And that's all I have to say on the budget report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tina. Michael.
Just to thank Tina and the wider team. I mean, you know, it goes without saying, doesn't it? But I think it is worth saying that, you know, we continue to operate in very, very unpredictable circumstances and very negative circumstances in terms of the way that we're being treated by the government in terms of funding for vital public services that people rely on. A cautionary point, I think, from me as finance portfolio holder, which Tina alluded to, a total projected underspend for 23-24 as at Q2 of 182,500. I suspect, although I wouldn't want to bet my house on it, that is not where we'll end up by year end, given some of the pressures that we are. If we do end up in that position, obviously that is a positive for us, but I suspect that is where we might not end up. One point that Tina has alluded to, which is of significant concern to me, and I know that you, Leader, have been pressing the government on, is the continued increased demand on temporary accommodation. And, you know, it is deeply frustrating to me that writ large here in the report is an increase in homelessness, people who, whilst there are minus temperatures out there facing homelessness, we have a Home Secretary nationally who decided to say this week that being homeless is a lifestyle choice. It's not a lifestyle choice. People who work here in our housing needs team know it's not a lifestyle choice. It's a political choice. It's a decision by this government to preside over a decade of a decline in social housing, to have not got to grips with reforming no-fault evictions, so we still find people being forced out homeless through no fault of their own, and a complete failure by the state to invest in council housing, which we've been calling for many, many years. And it's deeply frustrating to me that there is not only the real people out there who are being forced to be homeless, but the effect that's having on our team here as a housing and homelessness needs team at the council, who week in, week out, in fact day in, day out, have to deal with very traumatic cases where real human beings are being left in the 5th or 6th richest country in the world, out in the cold. And when I was out knocking on doors in Daybrook the other week, speaking to residents, it was absolutely heartbreaking to meet somebody who is homeless here in our own park, who I found out had been sleeping in the entrance to the disabled toilets, who was in absolute tears because he didn't feel that the government agencies nationally were supporting him, and we're now trying to wrap some support around him to get him assistance, and he will be one of many people who are facing that hardship. The other points I just wanted to allude to, Leader, were to commend the Revenues and Benefits team for, I think, the outstanding performance given the auspicious sort of difficult circumstances that we are operating in terms of being almost on target in raising council tax. We're a percentage adrift in terms of where the target is, and we are doing much better than the target in terms of collecting in business rates, which, given the fact that the budget is largely propped up by council tax and business rates, is significant. Tina's obviously referenced the fact that our council tax reduction scheme It's costing now the council money over and above the government grant that is given to the tune of £6,500 and an additional £64,000 for care leavers. And I say it is worth every single penny. And I'm incredibly proud of this administration that we have invested in that. That is protecting 4,500, if not more than 4,500 working age families from being hit by a huge bill at a time when they're already paying more for the weekly shop, they're paying more for their energy and they're paying more for their fuel. So I think it's worth every single penny. And I think in times like this where people are falling on tough times, it's absolutely the right thing for the taxpayers and businesses of this borough to pool their resources to protect the most vulnerable. And that's exactly what that scheme does. The other thing, obviously, there is concern about is what will be the pay award next year. There'll have to be negotiations, obviously, with the trade unions, but that might have a significant impact on the budget. And the final point I just wanted to make, Leader, in terms of the overall budget, is the position that the council continues to find itself in. We are a month away from the government announcing the local government finance settlement. You and I have written to the Chancellor and the Secretary of State outlining that the Gedling Borough Council is still the 5th worst affected council in the country in terms of comparing the amount of money we have now at present day to where we were in 2015-16. So we haven't even gone back to 2010, which was when this government took control, with the 5th worst affected council in the entire country. And that has got to change in this local government funding settlement. The 2 MPs who represent us locally have got to get into the Treasury, into the Prime Minister's office and start arguing for the residents and businesses who live in this area, because it is completely unsatisfactory that we have found ourselves year on year in either the 7th worst position, the 5th worst position, or the previous 2 years, I think we were in the 2nd or 1st worst position. And it's doubly galling for us in Gedling, because not only does that have a very real impact on maintaining our parks, keeping our leisure centres open, investing in our town centres, investing in neighbourhood wardens who support the important work of the police. That is if you ever see a police officer now after the cuts from this government. But it is a double hit for us because we've not had a single penny from any of the capital investment from the government. I think we're now at north of £9 billion invested by this government over 6 individual different funds, 2 levelling up funds, a towns fund, a future high streets fund, and a levelling up partnerships fund. And in recent weeks, I think at the beginning of October, a long-term plan for towns fund. I've lost, to be honest, track, John, of what the individual funds are called. And if you look down our nearest neighbours in Nottinghamshire, every single council within Nottinghamshire, with the exception of Gedling and Rushcliffe, have received to the tune of tens of millions, some 50 million, some 60 million, some 30 million. And how much has Gedling received? And this is the residents of Gedling, not the council that is Gedling, not a penny. Not a single penny from that capital investment fund. So I would just like to wrap up this report by saying a huge thank you to Tina and the team for continuing to maintain decent services. Do we get everything right in Gedling? No, we don't. Do we make mistakes? Yes, we do. We're not a perfect organisation. And when we make mistakes, we apologise for them and we try and do better. But we are maintaining decent public services and supporting residents and business in this borough in a very, very difficult circumstance where we're being treated very unfairly by the government. So I would implore the government, I would implore our local members of parliament to do something about it in the local government finance settlement. We're not asking to be front of the queue. We're not asking for millions and millions and millions of pounds like other people have been given around the country. We're just asking for a fair crack at the whip. And I don't think that's unreasonable, given that the hard-working taxpayers and businesses who live in our borough and work in our borough are contributing to the overall system as well. But a thank you to you, Tina, and a thank you to the work that you and the wider team are doing within the council in very difficult circumstances.
Thanks, Michael. Viv?
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Tina, for your report. Following on from what Michael's saying in this, extremely difficult, challenging time for us financially, I want to, to say to us as a borough how well we're doing at this very difficult time in terms of trying to get to our net zero. And the fact that actually we are overspent on the HVO, but the difference that is making in terms of our fleet that are not using diesel, the difference that is making in terms of air quality and in terms of sort of our priorities around a place. I'm saying that we want to live in a cleaner, healthier environment for our children, the next generation. It's a challenge for us because we've just heard about the budget, but yet we still continue to move on. And I think that That will go when we look at the leisure strategy and we look at what we're trying to do to create a healthier environment. So I'd just like to commend us for sticking with that in a very challenging, difficult time. Thank you.
Thanks, Viv. There's also the 12,000 on page 38, the air quality monitor. That's been renewed as well. So yeah, it is a good news story. I don't know whether we've done any press on that one yet, but it's, you know, we are keeping an eye on it for people. Anyone else? Yeah, Jenny?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I just want to endorse what Michael said about bed and breakfast and homelessness and the work that our staff do in actually trying to prevent homelessness whenever or wherever they can. And the fact that the numbers are going up puts increasing pressure on. I did hear a report that something like 1 to 2 million people had already missed a crucial bill. So the indications are that things are going to get worse rather than better. Like you, I'm extremely proud that we're one of the last councils to retain the council tax reduction scheme, and I think the uptake shows how necessary it is. And in addition to that, the care leavers support, which is increasing, and hopefully it's because people are getting to know that it's there, and obviously a much needed and welcome support for care leavers. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. There's no one else. We'll move to the recommendation there. That's to approve a general fund budget requirement set out in Appendix 1. 2 is to note the use of reserves and funds during Q2 as detailed in Appendix 2. And 3, to approve the changes to the capital programme included in paragraph 4. I'll move that. Seconder?
Yes.
Seconder, we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, which is Mike.
Okay, thank you, Leader. So this report sets out the performance data for the Council at the end of Q2, which represents the period July to September 2023. Starting with actions, there were 69 actions included in the new Gedling plan for delivery during 2023-24. And at the end of Q2, we have completed so far 4 actions. The remaining 65 are either in progress or assigned to an officer for delivery during the current year. In terms of performance indicators, there are 30 indicators, of which 16 are either on or above target, 1 was slightly below target, and 3 did actually miss the target. There are 8 indicators within those that are for data tracking purposes only. The ones who can add up, there are 2 missing from that statistic, and unfortunately due to the wage strikes at Veolia, the data that comes from them regarding the waste positions, there's 2 waste indicators, residual housing waste and recycled housing waste. That data hasn't been received by the Council yet for Q2. The table in paragraph 2.4 shows examples of particularly positive performance, and I just want to draw your attention to 3 of these. Firstly, the average time to process housing benefit changes and circumstances. Members might remember in last quarter this missed the target, so this is a really positive turnaround, where in actual fact now we are beating the 5-day target and performing at 3.3 days. That's a really good result by the team. Secondly, the net additional homes provided, where again we've achieved a huge figure, a figure of 173 this quarter against a target of 124. And linked to this is the number of affordable homes delivered, where if this time it's measured on a half-yearly basis, we've achieved a figure of 90 in the half-year against a half-year target of 30. So again, really positive news. The reasons for the 3 indicators that have missed the target are set out in paragraph 2.5. Firstly, the percentage of minor planning applications processed within 8 weeks, where we have a performance of 79.3% against a target of 86. There has been a backlog of applications due to a certain number of staff vacancies in the team, which has caused the team to slightly miss this target this quarter. However, performance is back improving again, and it is expected to be back in line at the next quarter. Secondly, the number of attendances at Bollington Theatre, where we have recorded 9,386 people attending against a target of 10,150. If you remember, there's been quite a high-profile strike with the writers and actors in the United States, and we believe this has had an impact on the take-up there because there hasn't been as many major releases during the summer, and therefore there's not the attraction for people to go and see those films. So Slightly missing the target in this quarter, I think, is a really, really good result, and we look forward to seeing what the Q3 figures outturn at. We are doing some more work now around the marketing and promotion of the Bonington Theatre as well. It is, buried, if you like, in the middle of the leisure centre, so we're trying to bring that more prominent and make sure it's marketed appropriately. The third one there is number of working days lost due to sickness absence, where we have a performance of 9.66 days against a target of 9 days. This is mainly due to the high number of long-term absence cases, and we're not alone in that in this borough. Many councils across the country are facing a lot of long-term absences at the moment due to the stresses of financial conditions and everything else. But here we do have our managers working proactively with the HR team to support a return to work at the appropriate time. Paragraph 2.6 provides a summary of the position regarding compliments, complaints and MPs' letters, and these continue to be reviewed by the senior leadership team. In terms of achievements over the last quarter, these are set out in detail in the appendix, but I've also separately highlighted some in paragraph 2.7. These cover the Gedling Green Homes Local Authority Delivery Grant Scheme, Phase 3, which concluded in September. I'm really pleased to report that we installed 64 energy efficiency measures to 63 individual homes. We have provided a new CCTV camera installation in Colic. We provided 3 summer holiday activities by working in partnership with the St George's Centre in Netherfield and Jigsaw Homes. We were announced APSI award winners for the Knox Green Reward Scheme. Again, just to say this is not a Gedling thing, it is a county-wide initiative. Well, that's excellent news for that. The Arnold Jobs Fair, they were queuing out the door, which was absolutely fantastic when we saw it. We attracted more than 30 employees and training advisors to the event, and over 370 job seekers attended as well. Really, really good news. And finally, Leader, the Green Flag Awards, where we have once again achieved recognition for 5 of our quality parks. So as always, I'd like to place on record my thanks to all staff for continuing to deliver high quality services for the council over this last quarter. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And are we going to Green Flag Awards? So we're going to go for another one, try and get to 6.
We'll try.
Next year. I know. Thank you. A lot of work going to get that. There was something I was going to bring up here on staff sickness. Should we get to that target in that time? Target to 9 days as against 966.
It might be tight because we've got the winter period coming.
Yeah, that's what
like every council, we have an ageing workforce, and it's taken its toll, unfortunately.
And just actually on that is, can we have a report to Cabinet at some point to see how the menopause, the policy we brought in, I've not heard a lot since, so see how we're doing with that. And if it's been, the work's been done and people have taken advantage of it at some point in the future.
Yeah, the menopause policy is live, and we've got a portfolio holder who looks after that, and I'll talk to Catherine, and we'll get some report out for you, Leader.
Because I'm still surprised lots of places haven't got a policy, and lots of councils, organisations, etc. So we need to keep the pressure on it. Are there any questions? Thank you, Marge.
A comment rather than a question, Leader. Thank you. I'd just like to comment that despite the Veolia strike and the considerable sickness in the parks and street cleaning team, waste collections were able to continue our not the residual, the I can't think of the words for waste management. Basically, the recycling waste was able to continue for the local residents. We had to manage it. It was managed. Thank you.
Thank you. Viv?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just to add to what Mike was saying in terms of that, thanks, Mike, for the report. Just to say that I'd like to thank for the APSI Service Award. Although it wasn't us, it was about partnership. I think we're good in Gedling at doing partnership, and it's really important that we do partnership to achieve what we need to achieve. And I'd like to put my thanks on record for, Sim, Sam, Mel, and the team for all their work that they've done for that. To win that award, I think, is outstanding. So absolutely. And also for obviously the team, Jane and Mel, for the team, for the continual commitment to our fantastic parks that we have in the borough. I think we've got more parks than the whole of Birmingham, and I think they're all brilliant. So, yeah, well done in terms of that. Thank you.
David.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, you know that we were at the debrief for the Safer Streets 4 programme earlier on this week, and just looking at pages 94 and 95. So it's worth recognising what that we've achieved through the Safer Streets with the additional warden patrols, improved shop radio, the CCTV, youth diversion and environmental improvements. But it's interesting, the general view of all the authorities there, the debrief, was that we've achieved some good things as local authorities, but there's a lot of downside to this way of allocating funding. I mean, give credit to the Police and Crime Commissioner that she did work with all the CSPs to make sure we all got some funding, which wasn't the case in the first rounds. But it's also worth recognising that a lot of the needs that we've been addressing through this have been caused by austerity. You know, we've had to put extra youth diversion sessions in because we've lost youth workers. You know, we had loss of police officers and cuts in mental health services. So we're very much putting a sticking plaster on problems that have been caused over several years. There was a general view that there's a bureaucracy in all of this, that you're bidding for small pockets of money rather than having the money allocated as of right with the time to plan things through. You're having to jump around to meet the criteria the government set rather than addressing the needs of the area. So we've done some good things, but it's not the way to do things. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I think you're right. They're not a safer partnership, and you know, everybody moans about not having enough money, but they've got on with it and done the job with what they've got. There's certainly a partnership. You could feel it there. But one of the things that came through in that meeting on Monday was the fact that there isn't enough time to put the bids in. And we know that, don't we? No matter who's the government, you know, they really ought to give. There's a lot more time to get some of these bids put together. But you know what they've done, the money we've got from the Crime Commissioner has been really helpful, and I think we've used it wisely. Is there anyone else? Someone else? Michael, sorry.
I mean, the two things to say, really. There's lots of good stuff here, and I think echo what Mike said. You know, thank you to everybody who works in the council, all members of staff, all teams, because none of this could be achieved without any of them. And you know, of course, it's very easy for councillors to sit here and take credit. Really, the credit isn't down to us. The credit is down to the hard-working staff who work flat out in very, very difficult circumstances and are very, very stretched given the pressure that is on the organisation. But I think it's to the credit of our staff, every single member of staff, that the council remains incredibly ambitious in spite of the pressures. I just wanted to just speak very briefly, John, about Bonington Theatre, because although in this report it's one of the indicators that fell slightly under its target in terms of having an attendance figure of 9,386 instead of the target of 10,150, the social value of the Bonington Theatre and the cinema is absolutely priceless. The families who I speak to who are socially isolated, the individuals who perhaps are elderly, who have lost their partner, who live on their own, whose perhaps only companionship is going down to the local cinema, who wouldn't feel safe enough getting on the bus and going into to Nottingham, and the families who feel priced out of going to the theatre and going to the cinema if you were travelling to one of the more regional venues or the venues that are in the city. I just think it's worth its weight in gold. And I think it was absolutely the right thing to do for this administration to invest in Bonington Theatre right at the front end when we first took control of the council in 2011. And I think it's paid absolute dividends. And I think there's a danger sometimes with these performance targets that you look at the individual figure and you say, well, it's fallen slightly adrift, it's red rather than amber or green. Is it therefore a failure? Which is not what we're saying. It absolutely hasn't been a failure. It's been a rip-roaring success. And there are lots and lots of people who cherish the fact that we have a arts and theatre venue that is within one of our towns within the borough. I think the team there do absolutely brilliant work.
Thanks, Michael. I think you're correct there as well, and you can also access the Royal Opera House and other places, shows from the West End, on your own doorstep for a very reasonable price. So, no travel, no parking fees, we'll say that. And, it is an asset, there's no doubt it. They've worked hard, credit to the, to the staff, David Popple and his staff down there. Are there any other comments? There are none showing. So we're asked on page 55 to note it. Can we note it? Thank you. Very much. Moving on to item 8, and I think it's Jo's turn. Where is she? She's over there.
Hi.
That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, this is a regular report that we bring to Cabinet on an annual basis relating to the 5-year land supply assessment. So this is a forward-looking document to understand the amount of land that we have available for housing. And this latest report covers the period 2023 to 2028. The methodology for undertaking 5-year land supply assessments is clearly explained within the document, and we also use some assumptions from a common SLAR methodology that's been prepared in accordance with the other Greater Nottingham planning authorities. The housing target that we're trying to achieve is set by the government standard method, and the appendix to the 5-year land supply document itself sets out a list of all of the sites that we consider are going to come forward within that 5-year period, and there's a trajectory which sets out which year each site is expected to deliver a particular number of homes. The assessment concludes that we have a 6.76-year supply of housing land. This is a slight decrease from the previous year's assessment. The figure then was 7.25 years supply. And the main reason for this is due to the recent strong progress in terms of completions from sites from our local plan, resulting in, therefore, being fewer dwellings left to build across the 5-year period. Just to provide some figures there, of the 33 sites that we have allocated in our core strategy and our local planning document, 3 of those are fully built out, 15 are under construction, and development is yet to begin on the remaining 15 sites. It's therefore important that the council continues to allocate land for development through the preparation of its local plan to make sure that we have an ongoing supply of housing land. So the recommendation of this report is to ask Cabinet to note the content of the 5-year land supply assessment as set out in Appendix A. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jo. Jenny?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think it's a report we've had many times, and I think it's quite straightforward. It's interesting, isn't it, that although the 5-year land supply has dropped slightly, it's actually because of the good news that we've actually been delivering on the house building. And just Jo's outlined, it's important that we have that up-to-date local plan going forward. But I don't think there's much more I can say. I think it's self-explanatory, and all the sites are set out in the appendix for anybody to have a look at. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Anyone else? Michael?
Just to echo what Councillor Hollingsworth has said, and to say particular thank you to Alison and Jo, but to the wider team. As ever, Jo, a fantastic report and a very brilliant presentation. And this is a very difficult area, and you know as well as I do, Jo, one that attracts quite a lot of public interest and attention, quite rightly, because obviously where we're building housing, where there is infrastructure being built for that housing, it has an impact on local communities. I just wanted to pull out 2 points from the report, Leader, if I may, which are tangential to the report, but are nonetheless contained within the report. A source of frustration around the H1 Rolleston Drive site. That was clearly a significant move forward in terms of tidying up, cleaning up a community I saw in the area. Clearly not within the gift of the council in terms of the circumstances that have happened around Ilka Homes and the difficulty that they have faced. But I know that the council continues to put pressure on those people who are responsible for the site, including our partners and colleagues at Jigsaw Homes, to try and get that resolved. And the reason I raise that is it was not only a tidying up of an eyesore site, there were people really looking forward to moving in there. It is clearly a site that's very close to the town centre. It looked to be a good development, and I sincerely hope that that development gets dealt with as swiftly as possible, and that when it gets dealt with, there is also consideration given to the impact of potential flooding in the surrounding area on Brookfield Road, on Bentwell Avenue, and on the surrounding roads there who were impacted recently. And then the second point I just wanted to make, Leader, was a frustration around, and I'm sure Councillor Hollingsworth and others share this, where we give permission for sites that are a strategic site, and then actually the landowners or the developers sit on those sites for a considerable number of years, often coming right up to the deadline, and effectively what you end up having is a sword of Damocles hanging over the communities who don't know whether they're coming or going in terms of that site being developed. And in the meantime, they can be facing issues in terms of what the impact of that land is. And I just particularly wanted to reference site H5, which sits within my own ward, Leader, where we had an application granted for that strategic site a significant number of years ago. Nothing's happened substantially with the site at the moment. It is very steep agricultural land at the moment. And in recent weeks, it's land that rears onto Lodge Farm Lane in Georgia Drive. I had 3 or 4 properties within my ward that were flooded as a result of significant downpour of water. It's clay there in Red Hill, as you know, Leader, and water that was coming down, obviously ended up in homes. So just a frustration from me, which is not a frustration with Joe and the team here, but a frustration that strategic sites are granted planning permission, but then sometimes you see developers or landowners sat on them not actually taking any action, and those residents feel, as I say, Leader, that they've got a sword of Damocles hanging over their head, and perhaps we need a change in legislation or the National Planning Policy Framework so that councils are more empowered to take swifter action where people aren't moving forwards on sites that have been approved. But overall, this is a positive position for the council. It's a good piece of work from Joe Allison and the wider team, and thank you, Joe, for the way in which you presented it.
Thanks, Michael. No further comments. I'll move that on page 99 and we note the report. We agreed? Agreed. Okay, we're moving over now. Fast and Furious, where are we? Marketplace. Is that you, Tanya?
It is. Thank you. The report before you concerns the Arnold Marketplace, which is known as the AMP, and seeks to revise the original business case with proposals concerning the fit-out of the first floor and the Arnold Market. Members will recall that a business case to support the AMP development was approved in 2020. The business case included the provision of 7 ground floor retail units and a first floor area for commercial office use. The business case also assumed an expansion of market provision with associated income growth. In October 2022, thank you, in October 22, the AMP building was handed over to the council. The report confirms that the lettings of the 7 retail units has exceeded the original business case financial assumptions, with all of the 7 units being fully let. However, the first floor unit has not attracted a tenant. The council's agent has cited that the cost of the fit-out and the size of the unit are prohibitive to securing a tenancy in the current market. Agents have advised that there has been interest in smaller units for start-up and small businesses, and as such, their advice has formed the basis of an option appraisal that is included in the revised business case and report. In view of agents' feedback, the Council's UK SPF investment plan included a budgetary allocation which is included in the exempt Appendix 2 to support an enterprise centre on the first floor of the AMP that can offer suitable space and facilities for start-up and small businesses. The report outlines how the investment in the creation of an enterprise centre supports the UK SPF interventions, particularly in creating business space and employment opportunities within the town. The report refers to the original business case assumption that the Arnold Market would relocate to the public space outside of the AMP, following its temporary relocation to Eagle Square. However, stallholders have expressed a wish to remain at Eagle Square, and in view of this feedback, the current arrangement has been extended to enable a formal consultation to be undertaken. To drive footfall into the town, the council has procured an independent market operator to develop and manage an event market programme outside of the AMP. This arrangement is cost neutral, with the operator incurring liabilities in relation to the market charter and other costs. In view of this and the current income levels derived from the Eagle Square market stalls, the original business case assumptions have been reviewed and revised. The proposals contained in the report is that the Council proceeds to fit out the AMP first floor in order to provide an enterprise centre that aligns with the UK SPF investment plan. It also proposes that in order to comply with the UK SPF funding terms and timescales, that the Council procures works through a compliant framework and also procures technical and contract management expertise that is not available in-house. The report also proposes that the Council seeks approval for formally consulting on the permanent location of the Arnold Market. Although the Council has the choice to do nothing, such an option would result in the first floor remaining void and would impact upon the financial business case that assumed an income after the first 18 months of operation of the AMP development. This option would also impact on the UK SPF funding and potential loss of funds. The Council could seek to develop the first floor for residential units. However, this would require change of use planning consent and funding. Such an option would also incur a potential risk of a tenant exercising a right to buy at a later stage at a discounted market value. The option of temporary accommodation has also been rejected as it does not align with the regeneration objectives of the original business case. To support the proposals, the report provides an overview of the revised financial position, included anticipated income from the first floor and the removal of income target for additional market stalls. It should be noted that the financial position has improved since the original business case was submitted. This improvement being largely down to the increased income from the ground floor units. In view of the information that I had provided and outlined in the business case and report, it is recommended that Cabinet approves the revision to the original Arnold Marketplace business case, which includes proposals for an enterprise centre to be developed on the first floor of the AMP, the proposal to consult on the permanent location of the Arnold Market, and the revision of the financial assumptions related to the market provision. Cabinet is also asked to approve the establishment of an AMP Enterprise Centre budget from the UK SPF Town Centre Improvement Budget in the Capital Programme that is detailed in the exempt Appendix 2.
Thank you. Jenny?
I think Tanya set it out so clearly. I'm not sure what I can add. It's very clear that we must go ahead with a business case that is compliant with the SPF grant funding. At the same time, it must be a plan and a development which is attractive to the market, which it certainly isn't at the moment. I think the business case is set out very well. So I'm really not sure what more I can add. Just to thank everybody for the work they've done in terms of getting those units filled. We're well ahead of where we said we might be at this time, which is so pleasing to see. Those businesses seem to be doing really well and have settled nicely into the area and are a welcome addition to that market area. So thanks to everybody that put the work in.
Thank you, Michael.
And thanks to Emma, I think, who worked very hard to get a post box in, I think, very recently. Is she here? Yeah. There you are. There you are. Thanks very much.
Michael?
Yeah, I'd just echo what Jenny says. I think the first thing to say up front is that Tanya and Emma's team is a small but I think exceptionally formed team, and I think you've done an absolutely outstanding job in very difficult circumstances. I think if anybody had said at the start of this, ask a team as small and as stretched as yours to oversee a £4.7 million investment and make it a success, there were a lot of naysayers and a lot of people asking questions, and I think you've wholeheartedly proved those people wrong on two fronts, really. One, as Jenny says, the fact that we were significantly ahead of where the original business case, and I think any reasonable person looking from the outside would have thought we were. I certainly had lots of residents who were saying to me, are you going to fill the units downstairs? I had nervousness that we weren't going to fill the units as quickly as we did, and we filled them because of the way that you've worked with the agents that we've worked with, but also the way that you've worked with your team and the way that you've worked with retailers and the way that you've overseen the project. And I think you deserve significant commendation, as Councillor Hollingsworth says, for that. I think the other thing I'd say, Leader, is that let's be really clear about this. As Tanya has said, the original business case set out and allowed for the council an 18-month period of marketing before any further investment decision or expenditure by the council was made on the upper floor. We're not at that 18 months yet. The handover of the project was in October 2022. Emma will correct me if I'm wrong. I remember being there with you, Leader, on the day of the handover. So we're not at the 18-month period. And I think what this is, Tanya, Emma and the wider team, obviously led by Jenny as the portfolio holder, doing is saying, let's get ahead of the game. There's a prime opportunity here with the UK Shared Prosperity funding. There's an option being set out by Tanya, Emma and Jenny as the portfolio holder to us to take advantage of that former European money that has now flowed down to us. And it's, as Jenny said, reacting and responding to what the market is telling us there is an appetite for. So I see this as a positive step forward. It's getting ahead of the curve. Hopefully it will mean that we can get people into that upper floor and that the AMP continues to be a success. And just, the other point Jenny makes, Emma does deserve credit for chasing the Royal Mail. They dragged the feet on moving those post boxes, and actually having a town, we've got a brilliant post office with Alison and the wider team who run the post office there. It's very popular with the residents in Arnold and surrounds and the businesses, and the post boxes were missed. You need 24-hour post boxes if you've got businesses in an area and residents, and I've been in conversation with Royal Mail and they've dragged their feet, so well done, Emma, for not letting go of that issue. And also just to give significant credit to each of the individual businesses who occupy the AMP. I know in the conversations John, you and I have had, and Mike, but also Jenny, I know David and Roxanne, obviously, whose ward it's in. I think they've really tried to make something of that development as well as their own businesses. And I know this moves afoot for them to come forward and try and do more events on the public space area in front of the AMP. And I'll just finish off by saying a thank you to the market traders, John, for their forbearance and their patience. I know at times it's been difficult for them. They've moved obviously to Eagle Square. I think they're quite content now in Eagle Square. There's clearly a big challenge for them in terms of Wilko's having closed both in Arnold and Carlton. But I know that Jenny, Emma, Tanya, the wider team, have other colleagues are working flat out to try and get somebody into both of those stores, and that desperately needs to happen because that was clearly an anchor store both for Arnold and for Carlton. But overall, I think this is a very well put forward business case, a very well put forward report, very well articulated, Tanya, by you today, and I think we are left with no choice. A change of use to residential units, I think, is not going to stack up. I think it would attract significant controversy and consternation from people in the town centre, and I'm not sure it'd be an appropriate or nice place for people to live. It's a stone's throw from some significant bars that open relatively late at night with noise. The council is not in a position to outlay significant investment, and I don't think we're in a position to do nothing. So I think the option you've set out is absolutely the right one, and I thank you for the work that you continue to do in the area.
Thanks, Michael. And Tanya, when's the first one going in? You'd expect that, wouldn't you? But when's the first person going through the door? No, it's not going to be it's not a long-term thing, is it? It'll be completion probably, 3-4 months?
I think it's slightly longer than that, but hopefully we need to start on site by the end of this financial year. I think the programme was about 4 to 6 months. Obviously, in the meantime, we'll start marketing them while the works are going on. So, yeah, hopefully we'll have people in there as soon as possible. But, yeah, it will be a bit longer than 4 months, potentially.
Yeah, I was only asking that because we'll be over the 18 months then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're asked to approve, nobody else? We're asked to approve on page 143 the revision of the original marketplace AMP business case. Appendix 1 that includes the proposal for Enterprise Centre on the first floor of the AMP. And item 2, their proposal to consult on the permanent location of the Arnold Market, which is important. Revision of the financial assumptions related to market provision. And item 2, there is to approve the establishment of an AMP Enterprise Centre budget from the UK SBF Town Centre Improvement Budget in the capital programme and we'll leave that at that. That, as Michael's mentioned, is European money, the bits that's left. So no matter what the government does about shouting, they're giving us this, that and the other, they haven't. That came from Europe. But anyway, I'll move it. Second it. Agreed. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Tanya. And we're moving on to, where are we? Item 10, strategic review. Where is he? Don't read it all out, Lance. I don't want a 3 hour. I mean, I've already waved these about in front of the camera.
Hey, I'll try not to.
It's all right, I won't.
I'll begin. Thank you, Leader. I've got the pleasure of bringing this detailed report to Cabinet today. And there's a couple of recommendations. One is to adopt the Strategic Outcomes Plan and Model, Stage 1, and the other is to adopt the Play and Pitch and Outdoor Sports Strategy. So I'll give a bit of background around those documents and how they've been pulled together to support Cabinet in their decision making. So what is a strategic outcomes planning model? It is very much a Sport England methodology, so we can fully understand the needs of our borough and how we can ensure we've got sustainable services and facilities to meet the needs of those residents going forward. I suppose it's broken down in 4 stages: outcomes, insight, interventions, and commitment. And the stage 1 document is very much about the outcome. So what's our vision? How are we going to move forward in terms of meeting that long-term need of our residents? It's detailed work, this, so I'd just like to thank the support we've had from consultants, because we need to procure some services to do the detailed analysis of the work that's happened. Consultants Max Associates, ORH and Knight, Kavanagh and Page have been instrumental in supporting us with the detailed work that we've needed to do to pull this together. In terms of the documents themselves, if I just introduce the stage 1 document of the strategic outcomes planning document, and this is very much, I talk about analysis, it's very much looking at the local and national strategy context for health and well-being and physical activity. So this is probably the most detailed analysis we've done to date, to see how what we're trying to do locally meets some of the national outcomes as well. So it gives a really helpful framework, particularly when we think about accessing resources to support what we do in future. It also looks at some detailed insight and also engagement we've done with local stakeholders, residents, and also with focus groups we've undertaken. So we've engaged with almost 30 stakeholders, partners, including our partners such as Health, the County Council, Active Knots, etc. Over 600 residents responded to a survey that's informed the work. We've also done 5 targeted focus groups, a local youth club, adults, daycare centre, and other settings as well to inform this work. The Play and Pitch and Outdoor Strategy, again, it follows Sport England frameworks and is very much the framework for us to identify how we can ensure sustainable provision of outdoor sports provision in the borough. So it identifies what the local supply and demand of that provision is and what the need is going forward, both now but into the future as well. So the stage 1 document can be found at Appendix A, and we've got Appendix B to D, which gives more detail around some of that stakeholder and resident engagement. At Appendix C, we can find the Play and Pitch and Outdoor Sports Strategy. Just focusing on the vision, themes and outcome within the Strategic Outcomes Planning model. So what we're looking to adopt today is a vision that Gedling is a healthy borough with its people more active, more often, and promotes health equality across our communities. In order to deliver that vision, we've identified 3 themes: economy, community and place. And these are themes that synergise with our own Gedling Plan themes. I think when we did this work, we realised that the themes in the Gedling Plan are very relevant in terms of the detailed analysis we've done. So we've adopted those 3 key themes for this strategy. And then under each of those themes, we've got some key strategic outcomes identified, which we'll look to move forward with as we look to improve the health of our population. And some of the outcomes include work around workforce development for the voluntary sector, but for our own workforce around leisure and sport, looking to support employers around promoting health for their staff, development of active environments in our town centres, but thinking about the people as well. How do we increase levels of activity, physical activity in the borough? Who do we target the most, who are most in need in particular? Inclusivity, accessibility of facilities, considering diversity in the population, addressing social isolation, making activity part of people's everyday life. And also, at the heart of this is about reducing health inequalities, which is why we have the vision that we've got. We'll also be thinking about our environmental agenda and how we make our leisure centres carbon neutral as well. And also, how do we utilise cycling and walking for residents, for both a bit for people to be active and healthy, but also to address that environmental agenda. And it's also about our green spaces as well. There's been a lot of analysis of how our green spaces can help support our healthy population. I think key to deliver these outcomes is financial sustainability. And that's really around how do we balance that community need we've identified against what's achievable and what's also financially viable as well. So that's part of our ongoing work, which we need to look at moving forward. There is additional work happening around insight, looking at our social demographic context, and also around the interventions we now need to deliver this strategy moving forward. So that includes working with our communities to enable people to be more active, but also thinking about our own leisure centre facilities as well. And we will look to, in the background, develop our indoor built facility strategy to think how do we deliver some of these outcomes with a sustainable set of leisure facilities moving forward. I think development of this evidence base is very robust. You know, it's on a scale we've not done before. I think it's there to ensure we can have sustainable delivery of the outcomes. I think moving forward, we'll use that to help with feasibility planning, business case development in any work we do. Because, as I said, at the heart is around the financial sustainability of this work. So that's really key. Just on the play and pitch and outdoor sports strategy, again, it's got a vision, aims, and strategic recommendations included in that piece of work. The vision for the play and pitch and outdoor sports strategy is to ensure that Gedling Borough Council has a robust, future-proof evidence base to ensure the appropriate provision of community facilities for active sport, providing exercise opportunity for all. So this really is around how do we ensure that those facilities we have out in our community that provide the opportunity for outdoor formal sport can be maintained and meet the needs of our population. There's key aims in this strategy, and they're very much around protecting the supply of facilities, enhancing provision where required, and also providing new facilities where there's a shortfall or there's the opportunity to provide those new facilities. And in page 187 of the pack, Table A details those objectives and some of the detailed recommendations that we'll look to move forward with this. And this involves how do we support provision through the planning process, how do we secure tenure for sports clubs at certain sites so they've got access to facilities in the long term. That may include working with educational facilities. There's also provision and recommendations around improving quality. As I said, linking to the planning process, can we secure developer contributions as well? And it's also about particularly where there's shortfall in provision at the moment, but particularly in the future as our population grows, how do we ensure we can get new provision in the borough to meet the demand that's created from that. The play and pitch and outdoor sports strategy, it has specific recommendations including within it for each sport, but it's also got a detailed site-by-site action plan. So this isn't just about council facilities, this is about facilities delivered across the board by communities, by education and other providers. So it's very much how do we use this document to work together in partnership to secure the resources that we need to maintain the provision we currently have, but also grow that as demand increases over the coming years. The key point to make is that the play and pitch and outdoor sports strategy will be reviewed annually. This is essential. without keeping the document up to date, Sport England and the national governing bodies for sport would consider the document to be out of date. So it's important we do that because this framework, this document provides us the lever to access additional funding streams such as Football Foundation, to really think about maintaining the stock and provision we have, but also the growth for the future. Should Cabinet seek to adopt the strategies today, the next stage will be ongoing assessment of those interventions, as I said, we need to make, the delivery of the strategy. So key to that is identifying the funding resources, as I've referred to move forward. I suppose the good news, the comprehensive evidence base we have for that will really help us, hopefully, to access future funding. We've already seen some success with access to some Sport England Swimming Pool Fund Phase 1, which in part the work and the background information on this strategy has really helped with that application. So again, moving forward, we'll look to use the information and evidence we've got through this work to try and bring more resources into the borough. And another action that we need to do is work with the Nottinghamshire FA to revisit the Gedling local football facility plan. Now our play and pitch strategy is up to date. So that's a refresh, and that's a key document that again helps to signpost the funders about the priorities in our borough around football provision in particular. So finally, this is all about partnership really. It's not just about what we can do in isolation. We've got a great relationship with our integrated care system partners through the South Notts Place-Based Partnership, so we can use this document to work with them to try and lever in resources, and also we have a good relationship with our community partners as well, the voluntary sector, sports clubs, etc. So hopefully these strategies give an opportunity for them to access funds that they need to deliver what they're doing in the community. So I offer these recommendations to Cabinet.
Thanks, Lance, and thank everyone else involved in that. As I did wave these about before, there's a lot of work gone into that, a bit like negotiating your way down the Amazon, I should imagine, to get through it, but which covers lots of the different departments. But Henry, do you want to say something?
Yes, very comprehensive report, excellent report. I'd just like to thank Lance and his team and also our partners who've put a lot of work into this report. It's an excellent report with a strong evidence base. The report will strengthen our case to secure external funding applications. It will help us to further enhance and improve local leisure facilities and promote physical activity opportunities. When I talk about leisure, I'm not just talking about leisure centres here. I'm talking about our, all the outdoor facilities, the footy, the rugby, the cricket, the tennis, etc. But also about cycling, running, walking, and indeed allotment gardening as well. Allotment gardening, very important in terms of promoting physical activity and better health outcomes. The strong evidence base in this report helps us with our partners in the NHS, within Public Health, Sports England, the voluntary sector, Active Knots, etc. It will help us to improve health and wellbeing outcomes of the borough's residents for the future, which in turn, in terms of coming back to the economic side of things and in terms of the health side of things, will help us to reduce the some of the strains, financial strains on local health services by helping to promote healthier lifestyles and choices as well. I think it's fantastic that we've just recently secured funding for improving our swimming pools in terms of making them more energy efficient, etc. What I'd like to see is the government stepping up to the mark a bit more as well and providing additional funding so that we can meet this really ambitious, all the content that's in it is very ambitious, but we need the funding to do that. So I'd like the government to step up to the mark to help us to improve the physical activity of residents and the health and wellbeing outcomes, but also to help us tackle the health inequalities that we need to do. So it's a very ambitious report, very strong, lots of evidence base in there, and I think this will, help us to secure further funding moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
I echo what Henry said. A massive thank you to Lance and the wider team, but also our partners that we've work with, and a specific thanks to the many amazing sports clubs we have across Gedling who do absolutely outstanding work. And I know that the team within Lance's team, the wider leisure team, have got very strong relationships with our many clubs. It is crucially important given the challenges we face around obesity, the challenges we face around physical and mental health, that we continue to maintain the best we can in the difficult financial circumstances that we face our leisure and recreational facilities in the broadest sense, as Henry said, which includes not just football, rugby, hockey, athletics, tennis, the bowls greens, our parks, our outdoor spaces, but actually things like our allotment facilities as well, some of which are absolutely exemplary within Gedling. This report really obviously is the models update, but also critically the playing pitch strategy puts us in a really good place, as Henry says, to go and argue with an updated evidence base for external funding and partnership funding and work with our partners to see investment, and that's absolutely where we need to be. And as Lance says, we've already had recent success with the swimming pools funding. I just wanted to pull out 2 or 3 issues people have been in touch with me and I've been working on recently, Leader, that are really important. I think the case that has been set out by Calverton Miners Welfare Trust, working with Arnold Eagles, the girls' team there, and the Miners Welfare team to have a 3G pitch on the first team pitch, I think is really important. It's been raised here in Council previously by local members, and we need to be doing what we can with our partners to support them. Likewise, myself and Councillor Hollingsworth, you have as well, John, have been in regular contact with Mapley All-Stars and Nathan Kenny's team, and they're an absolutely brilliant organisation within Gedling that are inspirational when I first met them, investing in young people. There are lots of other clubs, but they've come forward with a vision, frustratingly was kiboshed originally around the Gedling school site, but they've got a really positive vision around the use of Lamley Lane, and we've already seen positive investment recently from the work Jenny and Linda have been doing around the new play park there at Lamley Lane. It's a gateway to the country park. It's a beautiful piece of green open space next to Gedling Village, and the Mapley All-Stars team there have got, as articulated in the playing pitch strategy, a vision for having a community centre on there, a 3G pitch. There is clearly a need articulated in here for 3G pitches, particularly for football training, particularly during the winter. It's positive that we've got football back on Lamley Lane, but we still know that there are teams that are having to travel outside of the borough to use sand-based pitches for training, and Mapley All-Stars is one such example, and I think we need to do what we can to put our shoulder to the wheel and help them try and reach their aspirations around Lamley Lane, and the aspirations that Jenny's had for a very, very long time, to have some sort of community facility near to Lamley Lane and within Gedling Village for Jenny and Linda's ward. The other 2 points I just wanted to pull out, John, there are lots and lots of gems in here. Conway Road recreation ground in your ward, Leader, absolutely exemplary recreation ground, brilliant investment in the play park there, beautiful building that should be listed if it isn't listed, absolutely stunning building. There are tennis courts there that desperately need investment, and there is clear reference made in here to the fact that Gedling hasn't had a penny of funding from the Lawn Tennis Association. Other boroughs have, and I think that is one such example where we need to work with our colleagues in the Lawn Tennis Association to get investment in those tennis courts at Conway, because when you go down there and you talk to families, it's a very, very popular place to visit. And the other site, which is lesser known by people in the borough, is the 2 or 3 tennis courts that are just off Pavilion Road and Woodchurch Road near Bestwood Lodge, which sits in Councillor Gibbons and Councillor Rachel Ellis's ward, ran by a couple of people there who run the club, provide brilliant access to that site, and they've been in communication with me in recent months to say that that site desperately needs investment, and clearly we can't on our own as a council provide the investment to update those tennis courts, but working with the Lawn Tennis Association and other people we can. So I want to commend Lance and the wider team. I think this is an absolutely brilliant piece of work, and to say thank you to the amazing clubs that do really, really good work for all sports across the borough. I think this is another positive step forward for the council.
Thanks, Michael. Anyone else? No one else? You're certainly right about tennis. I think all the money went into the tennis centre, and now that's in... Is that in private hands? Yeah, which is frustrating. But, yeah, so if there's no further comment, then we'll move page 183. Recommendation, Cabinet adopt the Strategic Outcomes Planning Model Strategy Stage 1, and 2, Cabinet adopt the playing pitch and outdoor sports strategy. I moved it, seconded. We agreed? We are, thank you. I think that brings us to the end of business today. I'm correct? It is. Thank you very much.